This tutorial focuses on setting the policies from the Managed School or Managed District pages in Edulastic. The settings are important because they'll reflect the way your users sign up and sign on, the way the teachers roster their classes, the test behavior, and the level of security policies. Let's start with the Managed District or the Managed School section on the left side navigation menu. If you're a school admin in Edulastic, down here under User Management, you'll see Managed School. If you are a district admin in Edulastic, you'll see Managed District. The settings are very similar, so for the sake of this tutorial, we'll go through it from a district manager's page. We'll start with the district profile page. This is where you can customize the logo, a URL, and images and announcements for your users. When you select the Edit button in the far right corner, you are able to change the URL here. You can change the district logo. Here you can add another image. And then down here you can type in a unique announcement for your users. When you've made these changes, select Save. And then by selecting this district URL button, you can copy the URL and post it on a district portal or in an email to invite other users to start on their customized homepage. Now let's move to the far right side where we'll select the settings and policies. If you're a school admin and you do not see the settings option here, it's because your district page has not enabled school-level admins to modify the policies. In order to modify the settings specifically for your school, a district admin needs to enable it here. If you should have school admin access, please contact a colleague in your district who has a district administrator role. Alternatively, you can send a note to support@edulastic.com and we can help get the process started. Now, the first thing we'll do is we'll look under settings. The district sign-on policy is the first thing we'll see, and this determines how your users will log into Edulastic. The goal for all of these settings is to limit the choices to just what you need. For example, if your teachers use Google Classroom and your district uses Gmail accounts for students, you would limit the sign-on to just Google usernames. This will increase security, it'll avoid duplicating accounts, and it will reduce confusion for the students and the teachers. Your choices for signing on are username and password, which allows a student and teachers to create whatever usernames they want. Google and Microsoft Office 365 single sign-on usernames. You can use one of the learning management tools that we integrate, such as ClassLink, or you can use a combination of several of these. The next thing we'll look at is the sign-up policy. When it comes to the sign-up policy, a common concern is that students might sign up as a teacher. To prevent this, the most secure setting is to not allow teachers or students to sign up on their own. Instead, the users can be invited by an admin or by a teacher by entering the email in the Users tab or by the teacher signing the students up in their Manage Class section. We'll move down a little bit further and we'll look at the student enrollment policy. This allows teachers to search for students by first or last name when building the rosters. If your policy is to sign in with just one method like Google Single Sign-On, then allowing a teacher to search for students by first and last name makes it easier to find a student without having to have the exact email address. Moving down a little bit further, we have the Allow Student Addition With section. And this is very similar to student enrollment. Opening up the option for teachers to search for a student in more than one way, such as first or last name, can make the rostering process simpler. On the other hand, if there are students with identical names, you may want to restrict the student addition with just a username. So you can select just the Google usernames, you can select first and last name, or as you can see, you can do a combination of both here. Allowing school-level admin is the next section. We briefly discussed this earlier, and this is where a district can allow schools to set their own policies, as mentioned earlier. The reasons you would allow school admins to set policies different than a district policies might be because the school uses different rostering systems or has a different performance bands or testing policies. It's important to note that when you allow a school-level admin, the settings created for a school will override the district settings. The next section addresses domains and is a security measure for districts that have different email addresses for teachers and students. Restricting the domains for different functions or roles ensures that students won't access the content they should not. If you use a rostering program that integrates with Edulastic, such as Google Classroom or Canvas, you'll want to look at this third-party integration section. You can select the third-party rostering system or select none. By choosing this option, your teachers will see a button on their Manage Class pages to sync directly with that system. Another option you have is to disable the student login. This means that students can't log in outside of controlled times, and it can be turned on or off as needed. It's used by districts that need to have tight security around access to the testing plan for them. The enforced district sign-on policy means that whatever options are set at the top of the page are the only options available when students and teachers sign on to Edulastic. For example, it looks like this. In a district that has only allowed the students and teachers to sign in with Google Single Sign-On, it will be the only option they have when signing into the district homepage. Finally, the last option is a security measure that restricts access to Edulastic except from identified IP addresses. This provides another layer of security by restricting the access to tests that require a very controlled environment. As a final note, be sure to hit Save at the bottom every time you adjust a setting. Now let's move over to the test settings. The test settings is where you'll determine the test environment. This includes allowing partial scoring, test timer, and performance bands. The recommendation for these settings is to mimic your state test or your district benchmark scenarios. For example, if your state assessment tool gives credit for partially correct answers, or the students see a timer on their tests while they're taking the state assessments, you may want to leave this on to acclimate the students to the high-stakes environment they'll encounter. Additionally, you can set performance and proficiency bands for different types of assessments here. In Edulastic, we define assessments in the following ways. There's a common test, which is any test assigned by an Edulastic admin to one or more teachers or classes. There's a class test, which is a test assigned by a teacher to his or her own classes. And finally, we have practice tests. And these are those formative quick checks that you would want excluded from test data and any reports you're using to predict competency. So these truly are just those practice tests that are worth getting into Edulastic. However, they may throw off the predictability of common and class tests. Again, the recommendation, particularly for the common assessments, is to mimic your state district measurement bands. And please note that whatever you set here will be set as the default for all district or school assignments. Let's move over here to the tab Term. Here you can set the start and end dates of your school year. The important point to take away from here is that during the summer, Edulastic will use the end date to determine when to archive the classes. We do this so teachers can start the new school year with a fresh dashboard. Classes are typically archived by Edulastic in July, so if you have a non-traditional school year, pay attention to that end date so that the classes are not archived during instruction. And now let's move over to the district standards. Here you will select the default standards the teachers in your district or school are allowed to see. You can also allow teachers the freedom to choose from any other state standards or Common Core, NGSS, etc. As well, you can open it up so all teachers can see any other standards that the other teachers in the district or school have used as their preferred standards. The reason you may lock these down is so that all data, all tests given throughout the school or district aligns to the same standards. This makes it easier to run reports across the district and consider all assessments when evaluating competence. On the other hand, allowing teachers to access all standards gives the teachers a greater pool of questions and tests to choose from in the library. The best practice is to aim for a consistent set of standards that are used, whether that is locking down just one standard per subject or allowing for only a handful. Last, let's look at the performance bands and the standards proficiency bands. These bands that you set up here will be the parameters used on your reports and the live class boards for teachers and admins in the school or district. Any common assessments will use the bands that are set up here. Teachers will have the flexibility to modify these cut scores on class assignments for their own classes. And although they can modify the cut scores, the categories will be locked down to those that you have chosen here. You can create several bands or stick to just one, and you can also modify, edit, clone, and delete them using these icons over here. The same thing applies for the standards proficiency. You can set up multiple new bands, or you can modify existing bands. In summary, once you've set up your district policies, you can modify the settings at any time to adapt to different circumstances. Now let's move away from the district settings and we'll look at populating the other tabs. Let's start with the Users tab. Here's the place where you can create other admin accounts, invite teachers, and add students. The account hierarchy is that district admins can create other district admins, school admins, teachers, and students. A school admin can create other school admins, teachers, and students, and teachers can create student accounts. Here's where you can add the other admins. You'll select the Create New District Admin or Add a School Admin. You'll enter a username and a temporary password and select Yes, Create. For teachers, we recommend that admins invite teachers to register using the Bulk Add button. They can invite multiple teachers right here, and you'll just copy and paste your staff emails. This will generate an invite email that links a teacher directly to their teacher account to finish the registration process. You can also add or deactivate accounts here. Let's move over to the students. If teachers are rostering their students, then the user account is created by the teachers and automatically populated here for all students. Alternatively, an admin can also use a bulk add feature and add multiple students by pasting in the student usernames or adding one student at a time using the Actions button. One of the most efficient ways to generate student accounts is to have an admin copy and paste the student emails into the bulk section. This, as I mentioned earlier, will set up the accounts, and then the teachers can create their own rosters by searching by a student name from these pre-populated accounts. This and other processes are discussed in detail in our rostering tutorial. As the teachers add students to their classes, the courses, and enrollment tabs are automatically generated up here. As an admin, you have access to modify class names and rosters, merge duplicate classes or courses, and make edits to any one of these sections. For each of those functions, you're going to look to the Actions drop-down box in any one of these tabs. While we're still on the topic of adding district users, classes, and courses, I'd like to point out that the Schools tab is where admins can add new schools as necessary. Adding schools follows the same process as adding users and classes. Simply choose the Add School button or the Create School button here and enter the information. Again, the Actions box allows you to make edits or change things around a little bit. And as you play around with these users, schools, and classes tabs, you'll notice how intuitive it is, and they all seem to follow the same set of rules, where the Actions button is where you can make edits, and then the Create Schools or Create Users button or Invite Users is where you can do bulk actions. Before wrapping up, there are a number of ways that you can get support from us throughout the year. If you find that you need help or your teachers need help with Edulastic, we have several resources for getting support. Our support articles can be accessed here at the question mark. Clicking on the question mark icon, it will take you over here to our Help Topics library, where you can search on an issue by keyword or by question. The option you have while you're using Edulastic is to get help from our support team by selecting the chat icon in the bottom right corner. Our support team monitors this chat line, and you can ask questions that are specific about your account here. We do have a few other ways to reach out for support from us. If you go to the edulastic.com homepage and scroll down to the very bottom, you'll find several phone numbers and an email support line that you can access. The main number is our business line. The text support line for urgent questions is available to you during 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And finally, you can always send an email to support@edulastic.com and we'll help you right away. If you or your colleagues have training questions or more general questions, look to the resources page here for upcoming live seminars and links to on-demand training paths. You can also access self-service training kits to deliver training to your staff. In closing, once you've set up these policies and settings for your school or district, the next step is to get your teachers trained and ready to use Edulastic.